Good evening and welcome to a continuous comprehensive coverage of the high-stakes Ol-Kalou parliamentary by-election. I'm Jesse Rogers. The polls officially closed at 5 p.m. and the critical phase of vote counting and tallying is currently underway across the constituency's 144 polling stations, as about 73,480 registered voters were eligible to take part. It began at dawn as a peaceful civic exercise marked by remarkably high turnout and long patient queues with pockets of chaos. We saw instances where hooded armed men in plain clothes clashed with residents gathered outside polling stations. Also, there was an instance where journalists were manhandled by masked men and their equipment confiscated. This by-election, triggered by the passing of MP David Kiaraho in March this year, has morphed into a bitter supremacy battle for the Mount Kenya region. It is a direct political proxy war, pitting President William Ruto's UDA party against Rigathi Gachagua's DCP party, whose candidates are touted as the front-runners in this mini poll. We have our reporters on the ground and analysts right here in studio to break it all down for you in a way only we can. As I mentioned, our reporters have been pitching camp in Ol-Kalou since early this week, just getting a take of the feel of what exactly is happening. And we'll be crossing over live in just but a few to Ol-Kalou, where the vote counting and tallying process is underway. That will be coming your way in just but a few, so do stay with us, even as the results on social media, which haven't been accredited. So we'll be getting the latest in terms of the vote tallying process from our reporters. As I mentioned in studio, I'm joined by two guests, and I'll be introducing them in just but a few as we get to take a look at the legalese around IEBC's handling of the Ol-Kalou by-election, but equally the political implications of this particular by-election. What does it mean in terms of the political outlook for Mount Kenya region? Is this a true litmus test, or was Mbeere North previously the true litmus test? We'll be analyzing this with my guests right here in studio. Allow me to introduce them right briefly. I'm joined by Professor Gitile Naituli, a former NCIC commissioner, political analyst. Karibu sana, Prof. It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
I'm happy to be here.
Asante. Equally joined by Luciana Thuo, not a first time on the show. She's an electoral dispute resolution specialist. Karibu sana, madam. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you so much. And it has been a high-stakes political race in the Ol-Kalou by-election. We saw up to 9 candidates lined up in the ballot, but of course, as it has been touted earlier, DCP and UDA's candidate seem to be the front runners, but we won't take any credit from the other 7 candidates on this particular race. In just but a few, we'll be crossing over to our reporters just to get a feel of the vote counting process. I understand there are crowds of residents in Ol-Kalou out in the streets in celebratory mood, and we'll be trying to find out what exactly they are happy about, bearing in mind that this has been generally a peaceful process, but we've seen pockets and instances of chaos that played out during this particular voting day. And I think that's where we should begin. Thuo, I'll begin with you, because at the end of the day, we saw so many police officers actually sent to Ol-Kalou to ensure peace, order, tranquility is the order of the day. But we've seen instances of voter bribery on the lines. Some journalists have been targeted while covering the developments playing out in Ol-Kalou, their items confiscated. But generally, what would you say is IEBC's handling of this particular election? But before we come to you, I'm meant to understand that our reporter, Ken Gashuhi, is ready to give us an update of the latest from Ol-Kalou constituency. Gashuhi, a very good evening to you. I know it has been a long day just following up the developments playing out in Ol-Kalou, and thanks for that. Let's start with the very latest. Perhaps it would be proper to inform our viewers of who exactly is leading in terms of the vote counting process that is ongoing. And earlier on, we saw crowds of residents gathered in the streets. What's the celebratory mood in Ol-Kalou all about?
Thank you, Jesse. Indeed, we had a celebratory mood outside the Olkalau Comprehensive School, which is one of the largest polling stations within the Olkalau ward within this constituency. And according to the results that they had already been announced by the polling clerks and the presiding officers at the various streams, the DCP candidate was already leading in majority of the streams at that particular polling station. And just for example, we had some of the streams having the DCP candidate having up to 300 votes, and the UDA candidate having around 30 votes. And that kind of a gap was witnessed in a majority of the polling stations of the streams. And this has given the residents an indication that the DCP candidate might be heading for a win. And already the residents had gathered outside that school for celebrations. But just some few minutes ago, a contingent of police officers who have been deployed there have managed to disperse the residents from that specific school, and the IEBC officials are still going on with the process of counting and actually filling in the forms that are supposed to be submitted to the tallying centers. And for the moment, we have no crowd that has been left behind there, because the police have lobbed tear gas at the protesters. They have also fired they have fired rubber bullets into the air, and that has actually caused those who were celebrating to disperse and go back to maybe different sides of the town, as we wait for the results to be transmitted to the talent center where they are supposed to be announced officially. We are also keeping an eye on what is happening to the polling stations that are this distant. And actually, as we continue to look into whatever is happening here, we have seen that the residents are very eager to leave the polling stations once they are informed of who has actually won those the exercise that was conducted earlier today. Jesse?
Before we let you go, might you have access to the constituency tallying center? Who exactly is leading as we speak right now? I know IEBC hasn't declared the winner officially, but it would be prudent to inform our viewers on how the race is shaping up as the vote counting process continues.
Well, as I had just indicated, the race is showing that the DCP candidate, Sammy Douglas Kamau Ngodo, is heading for a win. And this is because of the results that we have received from the various polling stations, that is across the various wards. We are seeing that the DCP candidate has been leaving the UDA candidate with a gap of up to 300 votes per polling station or per stream in a polling station. And that means the DCP candidate already has an edge in clinching this seat. We also have seen on social media the various key persons in government already conceding defeat, those who are affiliated to UDA conceding defeat to the DCP party, and also congratulating the DCP candidate at the same time. That means they have already seen, because they have their own tallying or their own digital platforms where they are consolidating these votes. That means they have already seen the results might mean that the DCP candidate will win, even as they wait for the official announcement by the IEBC. Remember that their results remain just their results until they are declared by the IEBC.
Okay, Kashuhi, looking forward to more periodical updates on the race that is shaping up in Olkalau, and we'll be hoping to get the exact numbers in terms of the number of polling stations that have already tallied their votes, including how the race is shaping up in that gap. Do stay tuned to KTN for periodical updates. So back to you, Thuo, general analysis of IBC's handling of this all-important high-stakes vote in Olkalau.
Thanks again, Jesse, for having me. I think today marked in the history of elections in Kenya a rather regrettable turn of events. The morning began very well. I think we had received very strong assurances from the IEBC as to what they would be willing to do. We saw the presser 2 days ago about the deployment of police and the assurances that they would give a free, fair, credible election. And I think the start of the elections went very well. I think later in the day, we saw very unfortunate incidences, people attempting to bribe voters on the queues, masked goons attempting to access polling stations. And what we saw today, despite the assurances of the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, where we expected security agencies to be the ones keeping the peace, we saw civilians being the ones who were enforcing law and order and preventing preventing goons from entering polling stations, trying to assess whether policemen could be trusted to access polling stations. We saw civilians in some instances asking police to show them what they had in their cars. I think what is clear from the by-elections today is Kenyans don't trust the security sector. Kenyans don't trust the electoral body to safeguard and create an environment for the election that is free from corruption, free from intimidation, free from violence. But overall, I thought the way in which the election went today, by and large, in terms of the voting process, was good.
Okay, and that's proper to note, but I'm pretty sure you've seen some of these messages circulating online as well about a certain company, Polmaster Limited, that has been distributing what it calls pesa za nauli, transport money, to voters in Ol Kalou, a mere 500 shillings. In terms of the electoral laws and the way we're supposed to conduct ourselves during an election, regardless of it being a by-election, is this within the legal parameters?
Any attempt to induce someone to vote for you in a particular way or to facilitate their access to the polling station to vote is prohibited by the Election Offences Act. If you look at the way the Election Offences Act is crafted, it is intended to give effect to Articles 81 and 86 of the Constitution. The understanding is that wherever you have an election, it must represent the free expression of the will of the voters. You cannot have the free expression of the will of the voters if you have people putting pressure, whether it's financially or otherwise, because you can do it through money or through violence, for people to vote in a certain way. Whenever you're facilitating someone to access a polling station, you're not telling them to vote with their conscience. You're telling them, please remember us when you get there. So whether you acknowledge it openly or not, you are trying to influence the way a voter casts their ballot, and that is one of the things that the Electoral Code of Conduct and the Election Offences Act expressly prohibit.
Since we're talking about things that are prohibited, Luciana, how do we differentiate campaign funds that are being distributed during a by-election and, you know, government services? Because according to the same laws you've just quoted, our public officers shouldn't be launching development projects during an election time due to the ability to sway the masses.
Yeah.
So how do we draw the line between the ruling party campaign mechanisms and the government actually putting in development in the region? Because if you ask those who are pro-government, they'll say these gases were simply a process by the Energy Ministry, who's rolling out something that has been there. Though it should be, I think they were saying the gases should be subsidized, though they were handed out for free in Ol Kalou. So how do we draw the line between the two?
Okay. If you look at the Election Offences Act, particularly Section 14, it prohibits the use of state resources during elections.
Yes.
And the understanding is that any time you see a state officer expending resources, first of all, we must appreciate they're not personal resources. And so there are no state officers who are altruistically going about distributing money. Money is coming from somewhere. In the context of an election, and I believe we spoke about this the last time I was here,
yes,
if you're seeing money being distributed wantonly, the question you want to ask is, from which budget are these funds coming from? The reality is the money that we have seen expended in Ol Kalou throughout the electoral process cannot be traced to any particular budget. So either the people who are distributing the money got their money through illicit ways, or they diverted funds from a particular county or state budget towards those elections. That cannot be development for two reasons. One, all development must be accountable, must be transparent, and must be influenced by public participation, which means if you're bringing us gas cylinders, you must show us that the public was consulted and they said what we want as development is gas cylinders. There was no evidence that the people of Ol Kalou were consulted as to whether they want boats or gas cylinders, or they want to be given unga, or they want to be given mattresses. So there's no development which does not have people at the heart of it. But most importantly, there is no development which is not attributable to a budget, because when you have a budget, it means you have oversight. There is no one today who can account for that, whether it's 10 billion or 14 billion or 16 billion, if the former deputy president is to be believed, no one can account for the funds which have been used in Ol Kalou today. What that means is chances are we will not have access to certain public services elsewhere because the money was diverted towards Ol Kalou. Was it proof that Ol Kalou needed that money? No. Can we account for that money? No. So that cannot necessarily be said to be development. But most importantly, the timing of it is suspect. Why did they not do this development last year? 5 months ago? Why must they do it in the election period? That points to an indication that they wanted to sway the voters to vote a certain way.
Well, they say it's simply a coincidence, but we'll get to the crux of the matter in just but a few. Professor Gitile Naituli, let's interact on matters politics. This particular race was touted as Ruto versus Gachagua in terms of their claim to the votes in the vote-rich Mount Kenya region. But at the end of the day, it's a race between Samuel and Sami, the UDA candidate and the DCP candidate. We still haven't got the facts of the matter in terms of who might be leading, but according to our reporter, it seems that DCP is giving UDA a run for its money. Talk to us about the symbolism of this particular election, this close to the general election coming next year, because at the end of the day, Mbere North was touted as the litmus test. Right now, we are hearing that Ol Kalou is now the litmus test. Are we blowing this mini polls out of proportion?
Actually, no. For the president, this meant a lot. For the DCP leader, Gachagua, it means exactly nothing. Now, this is the reason. The president, I don't know which agenda he was supposed to sell to the people of Ol Kalou, because you see, the president had been president for 4 years. So he couldn't run on a record, already on the ground. That was a test, whether there is that record to run on. If he got his candidate elected, then he would have demonstrated that he had a record to run on. Now, in the absence of the record, the president again would have shown a vision for future progress for the people of Ol Kalou. If they voted for him, then they would have demonstrated that there is a vision for future, for the, not just Ol Kalou, but for the country. So he needed to prove those two things, that he has a vision for the future acceptable to the voters, Ol Kalou as a sample, and that his development record was enough to sell him. So why I say it means nothing to Gachagua? Gachagua is not the president. Gachagua does not lead any angels of government.
But he has a point to prove. If his stake to the mountain is legit, why not win a by-election in the mountain?
Gachagua was not supposed to prove anything. What he's supposed to do is he told the voters that the government abandoned you. After 2022, the promises were very good. I want to remind you that President Ruto's most fervent supporters in the Mount Kenya region were actually Nyandarua and Kirinyaga, for very good reasons. Uhuru Kenyatta had messed up with their milk. So milk had gone to 20 shillings. Also, remember, that's the home of the Mau Mau. So the story of the Umgans and the people, the fighters, the Mau Mau fighters, is also very alive there. So when Ruto came with the two things, the bottom-up economics, together with the dynasty versus Itasha Ronav. So these people gave him their heart. They gave him their soul. They are the most disappointed people in the Mount Kenya region with the William Ruto performance. So if he won it there, if he were to win there, because I get the counting is still going on, I don't send a message that the disappointment is not that big. And therefore the president has a hope of getting support in the Mount Kenya region. But I think he ruined the situation, because even if you were to win, there's the deployment of excess police. It looks more like an occupying force than a police which is supposed to police an election. You remember when an electoral area is declared, IMBC actually becomes the people in charge of the police in an electoral area. They become IMBC, the police officers become IMBC officials. That in deployment, excess in deployment, it sent a message that we are an occupied people. It's a very bad message to the citizens. I think the government in India is someone device. There are some area where you don't need that level, because the people already have a feeling that you are just not one of them. You just fired your deputy who happened to come from there. Now, when you send that level of police, what they see is an invading army. They don't see the police coming to protect the vote. Now, that's a bad message for the government to send anywhere. Also, it makes the winning not look a win. Even if you were to win with that kind of police, you don't just say that he intimidated people. He brought all these police that, remember he said that it forced citizens to enforce security by refusing masked people to. Now, that's already a violation of law. Remember, there is a high court ruling. In fact, I even think it may have been informed by the Court of Appeal, that the police must, when dealing with the public, must clearly identify themselves. That they cannot have baglavas and those kind of things. Okay? Yeah. They were having them in Olekalau. You also saw that people in Brandos actually shooting in the air. Now, that has given the government and IMBC a really very bad image. And I think that image, the government needs to take measures to correct this. Okay. Because you can end up preparing people basically for a very bad situation in 2027 when people lose faith in our police. Police is the glue that needs society together. The moment the faith with the police breaks, remember the country has only 126,000 policemen or so. They can't protect us if that faith is broken. So I think whoever deployed the police to allow this size, they need to think again.
So you can't justify the numbers by saying we had intelligence or we saw instances of political intolerance during the campaigns, and that's why we sent over 1,000 police officers to Olkalau. That justification doesn't hold water.
But there was
to you.
no political intolerance during the campaign. We saw UNDN distributing gas cylinders very peacefully.
There was political intolerance. No. Posters were actually torn, where we saw clashes between...
but that does not justify that level. That level of deployment.
All right.
It also does not justify the police coming in
balaclavas, masks, yes.
And also does not justify any unmarked vehicle. Civilian and baglavas is entering a polling station, then we see a threat to the right of the Kenyans to vote.
Okay, Luciana, let's talk about the legalese of conducting electoral processes. We saw a section of the political camp telling their supporters to protect the vote. After you vote, don't leave the polling stations. But as a quick rejoinder, IEBC officials told them you should be 400 meters away. If you finish voting, leave. So what does the law say about the sanctity of the polling station? And equally, Do you think IEBC can actually implement the campaign financing guidelines that it rolled out just recently?
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. If you look at the elections general regulations, the law is clear that the polling station is a restricted place. Most polling stations are just classrooms, so they're very small rooms, right? So you cannot allow too many people if the proper polling process is to be followed. So if you look at the elections general regulations, it presupposes the following people. The person in charge of the polling station is a presiding officer. They're the person to whom the security actors report. They're deputized by a deputy presiding officer. In case anything happened, the DPO would be the one to take over. Then there are about 7 polling clerks who are there to assist with identification, with handing out the ballot papers, with marking your finger once you have voted, with assisting you to vote if for whatever reason you need assistance. So there's about 7 clerks who are allocated in the polling station. Then you have agents. The law presupposes that you have a right as a candidate to monitor the process. So you can be there in person, or you can have someone in your stead who is your agent. By law, you can't both be present. So if the agent is present, the candidate must leave, and vice versa.
Is there anything like super agents?
No, there is no, and we saw the same arguments coming out in Mbeere, where certain former government officials came and purported to be super agents. There's no such thing in law. Once you are accredited as an agent, you have a right to be present unless your candidate is present. And then, of course, we have election observers who are impartial actors who come to monitor the process, and voters come in as and when they need to vote. The law, as you rightly pointed out, requires that as a voter, you are only allowed to be present while you are voting. So once you are done with voting, you're required to exit the polling station for good order. As I said, the space is restricted, so others must be able to come in and cast their vote. What we saw from the opposition is, I think, an overshoot of Mbeere, where there was a feeling that once we have voted, we are not sure that our votes will count. And so there was a directive issued by the former deputy president that once you leave, you vote, make sure you come and guard your votes. There is no law that allows voters to remain and guard their votes. That's why you have agents, that's why you have observers.
Okay.
When it comes to campaign financing regulations, I do not think, first of all, that the architecture we have for campaign finance regulation is workable for 2 reasons. One, it presupposes a context that is utopian. It does not exist. So it presupposes that Kenyan politicians are good, well-mannered people who have the capacity to exercise restraint and report themselves if they do the wrong thing. For example, the law presupposes that if you're a candidate and you receive public funds, that you will surrender the funds to the IEBC. Now, I have never seen a Kenyan politician surrendering funds other than when they want to induce people to vote for them or to get support. The law also presupposes that you will operate within certain limits, and that's why the IEBC put limits for each electoral seat. Now, if we were to work with the estimates that the IEBC gave us, the most that could be spent is for a presidential election, which was at about 4.4 billion.
Yes.
If we used by the figures which have been touted, between 10 and 16 billion in Ol Kalou alone, is there any possibility, and this is one constituency, is there any possibility that the IEBC can monitor 290? I don't foresee it. So IEBC lacks the capacity to enforce it. It also presupposes and puts a lot of deference to candidates to do the right thing, which I don't think our environment presupposes. But third and more importantly for me, the environment in which we do business in Kenya, we are a very cash-based economy. A lot of money changes hands, and we've seen MPs showing us thousands of dollars in their houses and things like that. The way in which our economy operates makes it very difficult to track money. So that then brought into the electoral process tells you it is unlikely that we will properly track money during elections.
Okay, that's worrying. Before you come in, Prof, just to update our viewers, we're still monitoring the developments happening in Ol Kalou. In fact, in just recently, we were highlighting live pictures from Ol Kalou. There you go. As you can see, residents gathered outside and just waiting, perhaps, trying to wait for the final tallying and the declaration of the winner in that particular by-election. So it seems things are generally peaceful, which is quite good to monitor. And we'll be linking up with our reporter in just a bit of you to get a feel of the situation at the ground in Ol Kalou constituency, even as the vote counting and tallying process continues. We now want to just inform you about the news updates that will be coming your way at the top of the hour. And this are some of the stories we have prepared for you. So just take a look before we continue with the conversation right here. Vote tallying and counting underway in Ol Kalou as residents wait with anxiety to learn of their new MP-elect after a day of voting that witnessed long queues. Chaos witnessed in Ol Kalou as residents clash with police over presence of hooded and masked armed men who allegedly invaded several polling stations. Plus,
Mr. Speaker,
Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna removed as Senate Deputy Minority Whip and replaced by Migori Senator Eddie Okech in changes announced by Senate Speaker Amason Kingi. And pressure mounts on Agri Muchelule to resign as the appellate judge finds himself at the center of a probe after his legally registered firearm was recovered from a suspected armed robber. Well, do stay tuned. KTN Prime will be starting at the top of the hour at 9 p.m. and we'll have live updates from Ol Kalou, including details of other stories making headlines. Let's continue with the studio discussion. Prof. Gitile, I'd like your take on IEBC's campaign financing regulations and its ability to enforce those regulations. Or what's your take on it briefly?
I actually think if IEBC want to enforce the campaign financing, they can do it. Because the law mandates that if you declare yourself a candidate, you open campaign account.
Yeah.
Now, the idea of opening a campaign account is because the agency, IEBC, want to monitor the money coming in that account and the money going into the account. That means that after the election, you must issue a comprehensive report on how that money was used. Now, if there is a limit, on that, on how much you should use, and you declare an over limit, they can declare that you are not illegitimately elected. So they have the legal muscle to do it. The question is, do they have the will?
But how many accounts do you have, Prof?
Myself.
Okay.
As a person.
Yeah, that was a rhetorical.
But in one bank. No, I have two
just
in one bank. No, two.
Two
I have
in one bank.
In one bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what stops a politician from registering
they are
this
supposed
account?
to open a campaign account, and the use of money from any other would be an illegal use of money, according to the Act.
Okay,
That's what we are saying. But you see, it is our habit not obeying the law.
True.
That's what she was explaining, because we don't obey the law. So they are likely even to use untraceable money, the one they have kept in the mattresses, in their homes. So that's why he was saying the MBC doesn't have the capacity to monitor them, and nobody has the capacity to do that. But if we really want to stick to the law is that if it's now in force, if it's in force now, the law is proper and is clearly crafted to protect Kenyans from being bribed during elections by limiting the amount of money you can use, also to give people a chance to enjoy their rights.
Let me ask you this. What's your take on the influence of money and rolled out development projects in terms of influencing voting patterns?
Now that one you will have to address region by region. The use of money in the Mount Kenya region will have no impact, because these people understand that they have accepted the fact they deserve development. When you bring money and the project during the campaign, these people understand that you are now bribing them, which is illegal. So they will take your money, but they are unlikely to give you the vote.
But
now, why I
North...
say in the region by region, Mbeere North, it was not because of money. Mbeere North has an interesting history. I wanted to tell you that. First of all, that election was clearly stolen. Okay? That is number two.
The court's cleared.
Number two, well, the court cleared, yes. But,
yes.
We saw unmarked vehicles, we saw a lot of things. But let me tell you something about Mbeere. It's a funny place. There was a time the president, we didn't like President Moi during Kano, that region, our region. And Muturi ran on the Kano ticket in a by-election in Mbeere and won the election. But during the general election, the president didn't even get 1,000 votes in Mbeere. You want the presidential vote. So the clans in some areas in the Mount Kenya region, they have a lot of weight, okay? So you have to look the fellow which clan he come from, then you have to look the history of the candidate themselves. So the local politics now come to play, not in the Kikuyu part of Mount Kenya region. Okay. They don't have those clans we have down there. But the eastern side, we have a lot of clan issues. That is why you cannot say in Mbeere what you saw was a support of William Ruto. If you want to wait, you wait in Mbeere in the election, you will see them voting probably 95 or 96% to the opposition candidate when the general election comes. And still, if there is a candidate UDA, they may still elect that candidate. So you can't, there's local dynamics which come to play in by-elections, which are not available in the general election to favor the president.
Okay, fair point. As we continue with the conversation, let's listen in to some of the sentiments shared by political leaders. Earlier on, our reporters got hold of the two front-runner candidates, that's Samuel Mushina Nyaga of UDA and Sammy Douglas Kamau of DCP, while they were casting their votes. We just want to listen in to what they had to say a little bit earlier on.
DCP candidate for this by-election on Kalau constituency. I've just cast my vote right now, and I am very, very, very happy at the speed at which the IBC is working. I had the privilege in the morning to visit several of the polling stations or polling centers. The turnout is very wonderful. The people have come out in numbers, and the officers that are there are doing quite a commendable job. Just a few hitches here and there that are common, like in the morning, some of our agents were asked to provide copies of the ID, which is not a requirement by law. But we had the RO solving the problem adequately. So from where I sit, the process is going on very nicely. The security is very tight. The people are coming out in numbers, and I'm urging them to continue coming out. There's still time until 5. Those that are still traveling, we wish them well, safe journeys to arrive here on time, so that every vote counts. That is what we want. Every vote must count. We must exercise that right that is there in our constitution, what we call universal suffrage. Let everyone have the right to vote. Thank you.
Are you confident of winning?
Well, I have done my campaign very well. I've put my trust in God. The numbers are very good from the exit polls, both from our side and even the side that we are competing with. The margins are very wide, and you'll see in a few hours. So, to answer your question, in the affirmative, it's an obvious yes.
All right, that was Sammy Douglas Kamau of DCP. Let's hear what Samuel Mushina Nyaga had to say briefly.
Large numbers, and it's really encouraging to see how people have turned out to vote and to exercise their democratic right. And I feel like as we have talked to the people of Orkarao, we have had 3 months to campaign. And I feel like we have done all our best, and people have really listened to us, because we encourage everyone within our constituencies to come out today and to come out in large numbers so that they could direct they are member of parliament who will serve them for the next 1 year. So I feel people are really, the turnout is really encouraging.
How is the security in this area?
Security, I feel today we have the security is well organized. Kwa sababu ukiangalia utaona maafisa wa polisi, they are everywhere. They are manning our roads and our police stations. So I feel the security is quite well today. Na sijapata incidents yote isipokuwa an incident that happened yesterday that one of my vehicle ambayo ilikuwa nasafirisha my agent ilikuwa pahali panaitwa Mugumo, ilienda ikachomwa na wahuni, but the situation ikakuwa controlled. Other than that incidents that happened yesterday night where my vehicle was burned, sijapata incidents zingine, but of course today's morning I have had some 2 other incidences whereby I've had some individuals wenye wanapeana pesa huku kwa polling station, and I'm calling the IEBC to investigate the issue because I have heard from my people na kwamba kuna watu walikuwa kwa police station kadhaa ambao wanajaribu kuhonga wapiga kura katika police station zetu, but I believe IEBC will take the action against those individuals who are trying to bribe our people so that we can have free and fair elections today.
Wale wako nyumbani unaweza waambia aje kuja kuvote?
I encourage whoever is at home, please come out and come and exercise your voting right, kwa sababu kupiga kura ni haki ya kila mmoja wetu. Mimi ningewahimiza, ingawa ninaona ya kwamba wananchi wetu wamejitokeza vizuri, lakini pia tungetaka the turnout to be good. Maybe even if it's possible we have 100% voters turnout hapa kwetu constituency ya Rukarau, ili wananchi waweze kuamua ni nani wangetaka akuwe mjumbe wao wa mwaka mmoja ambao umebaki.
How confidential?
One of the front-runner candidates, Samuel Mushinanyaga of the UDA party, speaking earlier on during the voting process. Vote counting is currently underway. And still, Rigathi Gachagua, the DCP party leader, spoke earlier on, raising a couple of issues. Here's a soundbite of one of the issues he raised. Listen in.
Been told now they are regrouping. They are planning to storm all the polling stations. And I'm surprised that EFECON and IBC has said nothing, even after polling stations have been attacked by hooded police. They are moving in vehicles in broad daylight with rifles and are wearing masks, and IBC is quiet because they are part of it.
Okay, Rigathi Gachagua, DCP party leader, speaking there, and of course highlighting the instances of what he claims are electoral malpractices. So, Luciana, all things said and done, we have a candidate who felt aggrieved in one way or the other, but equally highlighted that, you know, instances of voter bribery along the lines is quite unfortunate, and it happened earlier on. Equally, the ELOG, which is a body that monitors elections, raised alarm over instances of electoral malpractices, documented voter bribery, purchase of identity cards, and instances of political violence across the constituency. At the end of the day, this is not just a litmus test for the voting patterns in Mount Kenya region, but litmus test of IEBC's handling of the polls. I mean, the commission is new, but we have individuals who have been within the IEBC and have conducted elections time and time again. Talk to us about the expectations vis-a-vis the reality from the handling of today's poll. What do you make of their capacity to handle the 2027 general election briefly?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse. I think there's a general disappointment in the IEBC and how it has conducted the by-election up until now. Not just this by-election, but we had 4 other by-elections last year. And there was hue and cry as to whether or not the IEBC does have teeth to bite when it comes to violations. My feeling is that the IEBC has been given very extensive powers, both by the Constitution and by the Elections Act, but it has chosen not to exercise the full breadth of its powers. I'll give an example. If you look at the Electoral Code of Conduct, when it comes to censuring wrongful conduct, whether it's misuse of state resources or it's bribery or violence, the IEBC has a plethora of ways it can censure this conduct. Okay. The least of it is warnings, and that's the one that the IEBC unfortunately tends to use the most. But as we have seen, it's the least efficacious. So what IEBC tends to do repeatedly is say, we have warned you, we have warned you. the law presupposes that that is a starting point, but that's not the end point. So there should be a progression of more serious sanctions if the violations continue. So you move from formal warnings to fines. We have seen the IBC issue fines last year, Kasipul Kabondo. We have seen an attempt to issue fines in these by-elections, Wanjiku Mohia and David Gekaria. Those processes have been stopped by the courts. We are going to wait and see the outcome of those. But I believe, in my view, if the IBC really wanted to flex its muscles, they really do have the power to. For example, the Electoral Code of Conduct presupposes that political parties will man their candidates, their agent supporters, and their own officials so that they will enforce the Electoral Code of Conduct themselves. One of the ways the IEBC can get political parties to comply is using the power to disqualify a candidate or to disqualify a party from fielding a candidate. That is a power the IEBC has under the Electoral Code of Conduct. We have not seen the IEBC doing that. So the few people who have been censured, whether you're looking at Gekaria or Wanjiku Mohia, they're not the ones who have committed the most egregious violations, in my view. And therefore, the IEBC could, if it wanted, have taken more serious action and built credibility that it can actually hold a credible election. We are yet to see them giving us that confidence.
Okay, well, luckily we have 1 year and some change to the polls. Let's see if they pull up their socks, as they say. As we finalize, Prof, we have a minute or two. Talk to us about the voter turnout in all Kalau, number one, because by-elections are usually characterized by low voter turnout. It doesn't seem to be the case in all Kalau. But since we're speaking of all Kalau, it has its own voting patterns. The late MP Kiaraho was a Jubilee elected member of parliament, I think since 2013, 3 terms in Bunge, and he was able to fight off a growing wave of UDA in 2022. Speak to us about the voting patterns and the low voter turnout. Yeah.
Actually, they would mean that the late MP was actually a performer. One thing the Central Kenya does so effectively, and when I talk about Central Kenya, talking about the Kikuyu land, the Kikuyu part of, they are very particular in holding their leaders accountable. So they give you 5 years, you demonstrate in development, they will elect you regardless of the wave, they will return you. So it means he was really a real performer. That is one, because to beat the UDA wave then was not a small matter. True. Now, this turnout, the one which probably is more than any other by-election, has been brought about by the voters feeling that the government is how to steal the election. So they want them to say, whatever you do, you can't take this one. We must prevent you by voting in very large numbers. Yes. And I think in the general election, turnout may very well exceed 90% in the Central Kenya, because MBC needs to, from now on, work on the credibility gap. It's very big. Okay. The credibility gap is really, really big. So, sort of that, lack of that, there's an idea of protecting the vote, because the vote needs to be protected in 2 places, in the polling station and the constituent tallying center. And the opposition needs to demand that IBC obey Article 138 and Article 86C. The election of the president is supposed to end at the constituent tallying center, where the polling station's results are pooled together. That is the final. That is Article 38 is very clear. When more than one person is nominated to run for office of the president, then election shall be held in each constituency. It does not say that the election is held in Bomas. The Bomas, the chairman of IBC, has only 2 rows in the national election when it comes to the presidential vote, to check whether the president has gotten 50% plus 1, and to check whether the president has received 25% in 24 count. That's it. Okay. But otherwise, before he does that, every Kenyan already knows the result, because you have been following constituency announcements. Okay. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for your time. If we had more time, I'd be asking where this youthful vote that is so active online was today during the polling, because... They're not on the register. they will come.
Though IBC said they're using the register that was there until the late Kiaraho passed on.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's proper defense. Asante sana. Professor Gitile Naituli, always appreciate your input. Former NCIC commissioner and political analyst. Luciana Thuo, asante sana for your time and your input as well. We really appreciate it. An electoral dispute resolution specialist. And that's how we finish the deliberations at this particular hour. Remember, at the top of the hour at 9 p.m. or thereabout, we'll be coming to you with the latest in terms of news-making headlines, including live updates from Ol Kalou constituency, where a team has been camping since early this week in order to bring you the latest in terms of that vote counting and tallying process. I'm Jesse Rogers. Let's take a short break. I'll be back with KTN Prime to keep it right here.